Welcome back. We are MDEV1004, that's Mobile APIs and Frameworks, in the summer 2024 semester at Georgian. And it's week 10, part 2 of our broadcast and recording. In the last part, we talked about assignment 4, and assignment 3 was due. I just want to talk about a little bit of housekeeping about where we are. We're sitting at week 10. Next week, we're starting payment gateways for a couple weeks, then some more deployment options. I'm also going to do an exam review to some degree, and maybe release the I'll see how it goes. Some starter code. I may release some starter code here. We'll see how it goes. But for the next 3 weeks, it's going to be payment gateways and some additional things that we're going to be talking about. So it's not going to be so bad. I may break some of these in-class exercises down smaller. So they may not be as difficult as the ones you've seen so far this first half of the second half of semester. So like example, ICE 7, 8, 9 have been way more difficult than the ones that I've given you guys before. And you're going to see that 9 is also challenging today. So, so that is the housekeeping stuff. What we want to do today is I want to make authentication views for your Express API for both iOS and Android. And that means 2 more screens, and 2 more screens means lots of work and testing and everything else. We need to reactivate JW2 at the end to test everything, and that's ICE 9 is due this weekend. Let's kind of dig into it. So I've given you some starter stuff. Okay, so instead of starting from scratch, I've given you some of this to start with, which is good. Okay, we need this. And what this is giving you the view controllers and the activities instead of you making them by yourself. So this way you can get it done quicker. All right, so is it perfect? No, there's still some work we have to do, but it's going to give us some stuff. Okay. All right. Let's get to it. So what we want to do is I'm just going to kind of go over to my remote system. Here's my Mac. And like always, I'm going to start with the iOS side. And last week, what I showed you was we need to rename stuff. So I'm going to go into your ICEs here. And last week, we started with iOS ICE 8, right? And I'm just going to maximize this screen here for a second. And I'm just going to go into ICE 8 here, and I want to copy it into ICE 9, right? So first step is copy. So that's Command C and Command V. All right, and that should copy everything. And we want to rename this to ICE 9 iOS, right? ICE 9 iOS, and there you go. Okay, so that's the first part. So ICE 9 iOS, we have to rename. And then what we did last week was we brought this into Visual Studio Code. That's what I did before we started up Xcode. And this way, everything would be renamed properly, so it wouldn't be the previous in-class exercise 8. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to bring this into, just going to kind of drag and drop this one into VS Code, right? And what we did was we dug into the project, which is this part. And if I search for, again, if I do Command F, and if I search for in-class exercise, you can see that it's 8-iOS. We just want to say 8. And we want to replace 8 with 9, right? So that's the first part. We want to do this. There's 19 replacements in this one alone, right? So it helps us to do this right away. So now we've replaced the project PBXR or PBXproj file. I also search for other files in here. So I replaced this one. So this is the schema, right? And any other things, I search through them. It's a safe thing to do, to search through and make sure that there's nothing else that is showing, kind of anything to do with ICE 8. And if you notice no results, like you can quickly sort through here and see that there's nothing really at the end of the day that we have to worry about. The main files I kind of got. plist, that we changed that one already. And we changed this one, and so far, so good. Like this one didn't really have anything, right? So those ones are done. And then once we've done the Xcode proj, then we want to go into here and search for some of these. So again, I just kind of go through this, and I want to make sure that there's nothing, no remnants that change anything here from, ICE 9 or ICE 8 to ICE 9. That's nothing going to like disrupt me in any way. Base.lproj, we're going to get back to this, but here, if there's anything that will be here or here. Now here we can see that there is a change because this is our main storyboard. So we definitely want to go from ICE 8 to ICE 9. There's 3 replacements so far. We're going to have more in a second. So, and let's do that. All right, so then we've changed everything to ICE 9 iOS, which is pretty cool. And we're going to add 2 more controllers in here in a second. Here, there's nothing. Right here, there's just comments, so we can just swap those out. I don't mind doing that. Info.plist, again, nothing here. Movie.swift, nothing here. We've got nothing pretty much. Anywhere else we don't have comments. Comments we have like 1 change to make, and so on. So those are all done, and now that we've made all the changes to our iOS project, now and only then, oh sorry, one more thing, the internal folder we should change too. These internal folder names, we can rename them. So again, it's like right click, rename, right here, and we rename them here as well. This is also important to rename the folders. Those have to be renamed, right? Because otherwise it's like not quite complete. So again, we just want to rename those. And then everything should work just fine. I haven't found a better way to do this, like I said last time in the video, right? There's just no better way that I've seen. So unless if you guys find a better way, please let me know. But one thing we need to do is save all this work, because we can do that by saving all, right? And except if you don't do that, bad things happen, and then we don't want that to happen. So now we can close off this project. So code, well actually, before we do that, if we go to this, we know that in this part, there is some stuff we want to add. So if I go to the main storyboard here, right? Remember last time we did this, we can collapse this scene. This is the movie view controller. We can collapse this scene. This is the add edit API CRUD view controller. And we have 2 more scenes to add. We have a login screen and we have a register screen. And instead of you can kind of making one, I've added them for you. So back to the PowerPoint for a second, and I want to go here. Let's add the login view controller first. So login view controller, and I'm just going to modify this for a second before you get to it. So I'm going to go here, and one thing is ICE9-iOS is what it should be, because that's what I called it. So I'm just going to modify that and update this so everyone will have that, so you don't have to change the name of that at all. And then we're just going to copy everything here now. So this is the API login view controller. Grab all that, copy it, go back to the Mac, and then paste it in here. So paste it in. And then you can see that there's our login view controller that's in, right? And then I'm just going to collapse that. And now we need one more, which is the register view controller. I'm going to put that right here, and let's get that as well. So again, back to my PowerPoint, go here, and then grab the register view controller. Oh, one thing is I probably want to rename it. Let's edit that one as well. I want to rename this one so it's ICE9-iOS. That's just for me to do, not for you to do. Once you get here, it's going to be all named for you, right? So then I want to grab all this again. So grab all that and go here, copy it, and then go back to iOS or Mac and paste it in. And that should be everything you need to start your project properly. Okay, so we added those things. We modified the main storyboard. We definitely want to save this file. So we're going to save that. Sorry, we're going to save that. There we go. And then everything is saved. Now I want to exit out of Visual Studio Code, right? So let's exit out. And I want to use this terminal. And I want to go to, would you like to upgrade? Sure, I can upgrade, no problem. Then I want to go CD space, and I want to go into this project, which is the entire file, which is MDEV1004. M2024 ICE is and kind of put that in there. And I'm going to use this because remember I said to you, I like to use this more than the stuff that's built in. So I'm going to say git add dots, git commit minus M, and we'll say added project files for ICE 9-iOS, which is what we did. And then I'm going to git push and push that up to my GitHub repository. So if you have problems, for example from last week, you can always follow along with my GitHub repository, and it might make it easier for you than if I'm going too fast, if you're watching me, or if something is missing and yours doesn't work but mine works. Take a look at this. This is, again, the idea here is that you've gone through it so you understand it. So then on the test, it's not going to be so difficult. If you just copy paste my stuff, I mean, it's just to your detriment, I think, at the end. Okay, let's open this up now. So Xcode, I'm going to open up a project. So open an existing project. And again, I want to swim to ICE 9 iOS, this one. And I want to open that one up, ICE 9 iOS. So this is going to give us all the changes we made. Now it's indexing. Give it a second as it's doing this kind of stuff, right? And let's see what we need to add to make sure everything works. So first things first, let's check out our main storyboard. So that's the stuff that we want to do. So main storyboard, do we have everything is the question. And notice that here we have our login and we have our register screen. Take a look. So that's what I've given you so that you don't have to do it yourself. Guess what this is, okay? So you're clear. That's why I did this, to save you guys time. That's what it was for. Not for any other reason, just for this, to make sure that you save time, okay? So we have these things. We need to connect them, okay? So we need some segues, and we're going to get to that, but we need a segue that is going to go from Movie API login to the login screen. We need to go from there to favorite movies. Right now, you can see that the entry point for the application is favorite movies. We need to move that entry point so that it's this one, but we can't do that unless we have a API login view controller that is going to be kind of taking care of this thing. So let's add those files. So again, I'm going to go right here. I'm going to go in new file, and I'm going to add in an API login view controller. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a Cocoa Touch class to make it easy. So again, I'm going to say API, it's a view controller, class of view controller, UI view controller is of type next. And then we're going to say that the class name is API login view controller. Okay, and then we're going to click next. And it's going to ask me where do I want it. Well, I definitely want it here in my iOS stuff for ICE 9. We'll put that in. And it kind of creates this little class that we can point to. So for now, I'm just going to erase some of this stuff and go back in here and make sure that we have just a stub, which is what this is for what we need. So API login view controllers here. And now what we want to do, of course, is in the main storyboard, we want to point to this one. We want to point to this login view controller. We want to point this to that class, right? So class is API login view controller. We can select it. If it's not there, you should select it. That's one thing. So this one, even now, you can clearly see if I went to the assistant, I would see this. This is the idea. This is the test to see that they're connected. Okay, so that's one thing we wanted to do. So this is good. This is, it's ready to go, right? Because it has all these things. There's no code there, but it's ready to go. That's the first part. Next, let's do the same thing for my register API register view controller, which is this one. Okay, so let's do that one. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go right click and I want to new file, and then we're going to make it a Cocoa Touch class. Click next, and we're going to call this API register view controller. Register view controller, there it is, and then I'm going to click next, and then we're going to put it in the same spot. Click create. It's going to create this. I'm just going to clean it up again because we don't need all this stuff right now. And same thing with up here. So those are the things I need, right? And once I have that, I can go back to the main storyboard. Actually, let's close this off. This is the wrong one. I want to go back to the main storyboard. This one is the one I want. And I want to go over to this one, to Register View Controller. And when I click onto it, it should say API Register View Controller automatically for you, because that's what I kind of did for you. Okay. Now we want to mark. I want to mark this one as the entry point for the application. So remember, if I go back to this, you can see this gives you some information. But the one we want to use as an example is this one. So if I hover over the tab here, it's the attributes inspector that we want to see, right? And here where this says is initial view controller, we need to check this. So now what happens is a little arrow goes right here, okay? So that's what that happens. So right now, if we were to run this app, it would just come here. Let's try it. So again, I want to run it in my iPhone 15 Pro Max, which I have the simulator should be running somewhere here. And why is it not showing up in my screen here? Probably hidden or something. Let's let us run it anyway and see what happens. And we want to run it because this way we can test to see if we can see this part. Okay, so build succeeded, it's installing it now, and if everything goes right, then we'll see this come up, okay? If not, I'll just relaunch this thing. Maybe it's, there it is, okay. So here, so then what we should see in a second, if everything goes well, is, it's this. Okay, so this is what we want to see. This doesn't work, doesn't do anything. You can clearly see there's nothing that's going on. It's going to crash because there's nothing that's going to do anything there right now, as an example. And why? Because, well, the API login view controller doesn't really do anything, right? So the button doesn't go anywhere, all right? And it's supposed to point to something, but it doesn't point to anything, and that's why it crashes. But at least it opens, okay, which is good. So that's what I wanted. Excellent. And with that, we can start adding some code. Okay, so Yash Kumar, you're the only one that's here. Are you with me? Because if you're not, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, what am I going to do, right?
I am.
Excellent. Okay. So the next pieces that we want to start adding is we want to start adding those pieces for functionality, right? Because like we said, right now, if I go back to our login view controller, right? So let's go to API login view controller. You can see here there's nothing, but meanwhile, let's just go here for a second. There's a couple things we need to do, right? So our main storyboard, which is this, and our login view controller, right, this is the wrong one. Let's go back to our main storyboard for a second. There we go, this one. So if you notice this one here, right, our login view controller doesn't have a segue, and each of these things, if I actually click on this and then kind of go over to this, and let's take a look at all the connections, you can see that we have some connections, but they're disconnected. So we should disconnect these because those are from before, right? That's why it crashed, because there was connections here that didn't exist, right? So this is the first part. The first part is we have to, kind of fix this up, and that's how we're going to begin. All right. So again, it's not that difficult, right? To get all this stuff done. The thing that we have to consider when we're doing everything is all the changes that have to come into play, for our project. That's what we have to do. All right. So let me just get in there for a second, and I will make sure. Just looking at my notes, just to make sure we're on time today. I don't want to run over time today at all. So we'll start with the API login view controller. Okay. So let's get into that. So API login view controller is here. And what we want is two outlets, right? So again, back to main storyboard, right? What we want to do is we want to use the assistant editor, right? Which is going to show us this. Let's just kind of make this a little smaller so we can see it. And we'll bring our screen into the middle so we can see our movie API login. And what we want to do is we want to grab our two fields, the username field, which is this one. It's kind of hard to see on my screen here. And the password field, which is this one, and the login button, which is this one, and the register button, which is this one. And we want to get, kind of create outlets for all those things. So let's try it with the username. So again, I'm going to do control drag from here to here, and we're going to add in a UI text field outlet, which is going to be called username text field. Pretty straightforward, right? That's where that goes, username text field. Let's make a space for some of these things, right? Because we're going to add some more things in there. Let's do the same thing with our password. So again, we're going to control drag from this one to here, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to call this the password text field. Password text field. So let's put that in there, and then we have an extra space. We'll just remove that space. So those are the two things. We need those two things because we can't do anything without them. I also want to share a reference to my API login view controller, right? So that's a trick. Again, I'm going to use a public static variable, which is shared. It's called shared, which is of type API login view controller, and it's going to be optional. And I'm going to do this because I want to make a reference. This is my trick. I want to make a reference to this controller from another controller, right? So we can always come back to this one. So here in the view did load, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add that reference in here right away. So I'm going to say API login view controller dot shared, this one, right, is equal to self. So basically I'm assigning a reference from this view controller to itself. So if I ever reference this again, and because it's static, I don't have to instantiate an object of type API login view controller to get here. It's just automatically got that reference. Okay, that's really what this is. So it's a bit of a trick more than anything else. Okay, we also want to set up a way to clear these things if something goes wrong. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to make a function, and the function is going to be called clear login text fields. Clear login text fields, and all this function is going to do is going to say, hey, username text fields, dot text. That's going to equal to this, and the password text field dot text. That's also going to be equal to an empty string, and then username text field dot. And I want this to become the first responder. So becoming a first responder means I want to shift my focus to the username text field when I clear things. So it doesn't go somewhere else. It's going to kind of come back to the username when I come back here. So this is what this little clear login text field is going to do. Okay. Next, I want to get a reference to my login button, right? So again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do a control drag from here into this area, right? And it's going to be IB action this time, and the type is going to be a button. That's what that's going to be. And the name is going to be login button underscore pressed. Okay, that's what it's going to be. And I'm going to connect it. There's that. So that is the event handler for the button, right? That's what it's going to be. So this is handling the button press event. And here is where a lot of our work is going to be, right? So what I want to do is I want to do a guard let. I want to do a guard let here, right? So let's do this together. So guard let, and we're going to say that the username, if it's possible, this is like saying, hey, can I do this with the username? It's going to equal to username text field dot text. This is if it exists. And then I'm also going to do at the same time, this is something interesting. You can do both, and I'm going to get out of this in a second, but I want to do let password equal to the password text field dot text, okay? And else, if I can't do that, somehow if I can't assign it for some reason, then I want to do a print, which is going to be something like please enter both username and password. So I want to print that out, okay? It's not going to print anywhere, it's going to print for me, right? And then what I want to say is return. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to return out of here if these aren't there. Now, here is where if I wanted to put a pop-up, some kind of request or whatever that comes up, a little pop-up that, that's kind of like a toast that we have on the Android side, this is where I would put it. Okay, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just telling you this is where it's going to go. So this is the only thing I want to do right now. I'm going to skip back to this in a second. we're not going to complete this whole thing. I just want to do this. I'm just going to get some information and then check this out. The next part I want to do, because I want to get out of this little assistant editor, is get the register button pressed. So register button. So I'm going to control drag here. We're going to come back to that other thing in a second. Control drag. Actually, let's just do this again. So add some spaces to make it easier. Let's try that again. So again, clicking here and control drag in here. And again, it's an IB action. And we're going to say that this is the register button pressed event. So this is the register button pressed, right? And it's going to be of type button. There's the button type, not an any type. And then we're going to connect it. There we go. And now we have this thing. So this is the register event. This is the other button event. And this is going to help us out with what we're doing. Okay, so that's the button event. I don't care. I'm not going to fill this out yet because we're going to make segues. And I don't have segues yet. All right, so I'm going to come back to this. And then, so that's this part, register button pressed. I also want to create another IB action manually, and this is new, right, for ICE9. So I'm going to say at IB action. This is important to do. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to make a brand new custom unwind to login view controller. And this thing here is really a type of unwind segue. That's what this is going to be, which is of type UI storyboard segue. Okay. So why am I making this UI storyboard segue, I said. And why am I making this? Because I want to be able to come back here to the login screen by using an unwind segue. It's a special type of segue that allows me to, when I press the logout button, it's going to take me back here. That's what it's going to be. All right, so, and then what I want to do is I want to clear my login text fields because this is what's going to do that. So this, notice that there's no connection here, right? I have to have this in this thing right here, and it's a special segue that I'm going to set up. Okay, now that I've done this, now I can close off my assistant editor. Okay, so my assistant editor gone, and I'm going to go back to my my project view, and I'm going to go into my API login view controller. So here's this part, pretty much getting more filled out now. Okay. So we left it off here, backed into my login button. I'm just going to kind of do this so you can see more. So back into my login button pressed. I've got my username and password. That's what I'm hoping that I'm going to get. And then what I want to do is start doing more with issuing the request. I got to configure the request again. Now I want to do this. I want to say let URL string, right? That's going to equal to https://, and then I need the URL string for this thing, and we have it already, right? Because we did the add edit view controller and the movie view controller. We have this stuff. So let's go to add edit view controller, and look, here's the API kind of string. This would be changed for yours. Okay, yours has to be different than mine, please. Some people are using my stuff, and this is you representing your code as mine. That would be a 0 if you did that. So please don't do this kind of stuff. So what we want to do with this is we want to log in. That's what we want to do, and it's going to be a different kind of request. But first, we want to get the API, the link here. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go back to my login view controller, this one, and put that kind of request right in the URL string in there. So that's the first thing. And it won't be update clearly. That's not what it's going to be. It's going to be API, and then instead of movie, because we don't have to go to the movie, we just have to go log in. We can get it right from the top level, right? We'll want to log in, okay? So that is going to be something we can do. Then I'm going to guardlet, again, the URL, and see if I can do a URL where it's of type string, and we're going to use the URL string for this. And then else, somehow, if this doesn't work, right, then I'm going to print print for us, this is again for us, an invalid URL. So we know that somehow it's wrong, okay? And we're going to return. Remember what this is. This is logging in, right? I'm going to, kind of check the URL to make sure it's correct. So I'm still haven't made the request. I'm just configuring still, right? Now let's finally configure, the request that we're going to make. Because we need to configure this, right? And we're going to say let parameters, this is important, equal to, and here are the parameters, username, right? So that's username, whatever we got from the username itself, password, and that's password. And so why am I making a parameters array? Because that's what this is. If you hover over, this is now a parameters array. And the parameters array has two properties, username and password. And username and password come from the username and password that we got from our form. That's what we're going to do. So we're just configuring. We're making a parameters list. Then let's do the request. So var request. And we're going to say that that is of type URL request. And the URL request is the URL. So this is the URL. So we instantiated an object of type URL with this thing. Check to see if it's correct. We did. If this is malformed, it would have a problem. Now the request HTTP method is something we're going to say. So request.http method, that is going to be a post type. So equals to post. Okay, so that's the type. And the request, and we want to, this is new for today, set value, and the value that we're going to say is application /JSON. That's going to be the request, and this is going to be content dash type. Okay, content type. So that's the request value. We're going to set that value, and once we've got this, we're still configuring. We're going to do a do catch, and the do catch is going to be the request.http body, right? There's the body. If I'm going to try to JSON serialization, and I want to, so JSON serialization, and I want a dot data, and I go with JSON object, and I want to have parameters, the ones I just set, options, right? And the options that I'm going to set are none. So that's how it's going to be. That's the thing I'm going to try and do. Okay, so so this is the body. Now it says errors thrown here are not handled, right? And so that's what it says. Errors thrown here are not handled. How are you going to handle the thing? Well, we're going to put a catch. And in our catch directive, here is where we're going to start handling some errors. We're going to say print, and we're going to say that failed to encode parameters. So we're going to have a lot of checks for us, so we can check to see what the error is if somehow we couldn't encode the parameter. This is for us again. Printing goes to the debug view. All right, that's what it goes. So that's this. So do catch. We can reform that. And I don't like this. I like kind of this structure. A do catch, right? And this is kind of like a try catch. That's what that is. Now that we've configured the request properly, now we can issue the request. So we can issue the request to the API. And what that would look like is let task, we're going to make a task, is going to equal to our URL session task. URL session dot shared dot data task, and we're going to do a with our request. This is the actual request object itself. I'm going to use a completion closure, and the completion closure is going to include a weak self reference to the data, right? The response that we're going to get back, and the error in, and just like we've done last time, this is the same structure that we had last time, and we can now start checking. We can say that and again, I want to be clear about this. It says cannot find URL session in scope. Well, we go slow, right? So I've kind of gone a little too fast there when I'm typing. So that's when that starts happening, right? So we want to check to see if there's errors. So first thing we say if let error equal to error. If there's an error, that's what this means. Then what we want to do is we want to print for us again, failed to send request, right? And we would have this problem. Why would we have this problem? Because our API has spun down at this point, for sure, right? So we're going to return. So that's what this does. So this is first error we can get is failed to encode somehow. We can't encode the parameters, and the parameters are just these two things. And that would be if we got here, that means, well, we don't have a username and password. Somehow we got here and we don't have that, or whatever. I mean, I'm pretty much safe now at this point because I'm adding in a lot of things to prevent stuff like this from happening. But let's do a guard let. All right, and we're going to guard let the data is equal to data. So can we get data? Is there data? Else, if there's not, then I want to print we got an empty response. That's weird that we would get an empty response, but we can get that. That is possible, right? So we're going to return. All right, so then the next one is, what about if, right? If everything goes well, we're still in the URL session tasks. Now we're going to get our API response. Here's the response, okay? So the API response is within the task itself. And what we're going to do is another do catch, right? So here's a do catch. And I'm just going to put the catch in here just so that it doesn't complain. Okay, there's a do catch. And in the do catch itself, I'm going to do let JSON equal to try, and we're going to say JSON serialization, and I'm going to say JSON object with data, which is what we're going to get, and options that are 0. We're not going to have any options in there. And then we're going to cast this as a string, okay, of any, okay? That's what it's going to be. So when you see this, what this is trying to do is basically say, hey, let's get the JSON object, try and convert it into something that is of type JSON. That's what we're going to store there. Okay, now that we've done this, what if we have a success? If let success, and this is where we can read the JSON file, is equal to JSON, and their parameter that we're looking for is success. Remember, we have a success parameter. And if success is, we're going to cast this as a bool, right? If success is equal to true, right, then this is good. This is the if part, right? So if the success is true, then we're going to say, what's the token? Because remember, we're going to wait to get the token back from the API. Okay, so we're going to say if let token, and that's equal to JSON, and then let's get the token. Remember that's the token we're going to get back, and we're going to cast this as a string. So the token is going to be a string. And if we get a token, right? So if we're able to get a token from the request, then let's save. Oops. Let's save the token in user defaults. So user defaults is a place we can store locally on iOS. It's kind of like local storage, right? That's what it is. So we can say something like, hey, user defaults, I want to standard set, and I want to set the token, right? And for key I want to use, which is the auth token. So this is where I'm going to save the token that we're going to get in, as an example. Then I'm going to print user logged in successfully. Okay, that's what that's going to be for us. That's our thing. Okay. Again, and then what I want to do is I want to do a dispatch queue. This is the same as what we did last time. .main.async. This is on the main thread. That's what this is, on the main thread. Then what I want to do is I want to proceed to the CRUD view controller, right? Or in our case, it's the movie view controller. Movie view controller. Okay, that's what I want to do. And I want to say self, and I want to perform segue. right? And with identifier, and the identifier we don't have this yet, but we need an identifier called the login segue, okay? And the sender is going to be nil. Yeah, that's what the sender is going to be. We're not going to send the sender across. So this is us basically in the main thread async, if I'm okay. In the main thread, this is going to be able to teleport us into the main screen from our login screen. Okay, this is if we have a login, kind of thing. Well, what about if else we don't get the token? So this is we got the token, right? What about if we don't get the token? Well, we need an else there. So if we don't get the token, then print token not found in the response. So we know that that's the issue. Because again, this is all for us for troubleshooting, okay? So that's the first else. Okay, the next one is down here, because this one is highlighting this one. So what if we don't have success, right, as an example? Well, if we don't have success, then what's the error message, right? So we're going to say else. If we don't have success, then we want to let error message, right, equal to JSON, and we're going to get the message that we're going to get from JSON, which is going to tell us what the error is. This is coming from the server, right? And we're going to cast it as string, or if we don't get anything, it's going to be called unknown error. If we don't get some kind of message, we're just going to say it's an unknown error. But we should get the message. And then we're going to print, for us again, login failed, and we're going to say error message, right? So we're going to kind of log that error message for us to see, okay? That's up to here. Now what about, we're in the catch part. The catch part is if we can't do the API response somehow. So somehow if the response fails, then we're going to say print error, something like this, error decoding JSON response. So we're going to do this, and we're going to put the error up here, whatever that error happens to be. And then, after the catch, and after this part, this is the part that is there, but before we close off the function, we're going to go to task resume. So some people have sent me some emails saying, I don't understand what the task is. What is this task that you're making? How come we're using a task at all, right? And remember, what we're doing is multi-threading, right? And we're also doing asynchronous coding, right? Because remember that the server is going to return back information to the client when it feels like it. Like literally, you don't know when it's going to happen, right? So that's what's happening here. This is us getting kind of information back from the server whenever the server feels like it. That's what's going to be there. Okay, so that's the first part. The first part is, do we get anything? Did we get anything back? Okay. Just checking for time here because I want to make sure we're on time today. All right, so that is the first part. And the next part is in the register pressed event, right? We're going to also perform a segue. We need another one, right? We're going to perform a segue with identifier. And this one is going to be the register segue. Register segue. So the register segue is going to take us to the register controller. So again, example would be if we don't have login. If we don't have a username and password, we can't log in. It's going to give us an error, right? And then if we can't log in, then we should go to the register controller and register for kind of a new user. Okay, we have a couple things to set up before we test this out. So I want to go back to here, and I'm going to go to the main storyboard again, and we need to set up those segues. Okay, so that's the thing we have to do. So remember how segues work, right? So if I have my login here, then what I want to do is I want to be able to make a connection between my login and my favorite movies. That is the first segue, which is my login segue. Login segues, which is this way, okay? So login segue, I can go from my login view controller, this one, and I can go to my movie view controller, which is up to this one, all right? So there's my view controller. So I can control drag from here to here, right? And then it's going to say, what kind of segue do I want? I want to show segue, right? So that's what it does. It creates that kind of line. Okay, kind of creates that line. And what it allows us to do, and I'm just going to zoom out here so you can see it a little bit better, and maybe more. So this is what it looks like. I'm just going to pull this so it's closer. And just as at the same time, I'm going to pull this one so it's a little closer here and below, so kind of over here, just to restructure some of this stuff so we can kind of see it in one, maybe even a little bit closer. Maybe that's not even close enough. Something like this. Right, again, all we're doing is we're setting up what these views are going to look like here. So far we have our entry point here, and we set up this. We need to mention what this is, this part. So I got to click on this, and then I'm going to go over here, and then we're going to go to the identifier, and we're going to identify what this thing is called. This is called the login segue. We need to put that in. That's the login segue, right? All right, so that is this part. We need to do another one. We need to do one from here, right, to here. And again, it would be from the login API controller to the register. So I'm going to do a control drag from here. I found this is the easiest, by the way, to do, to here, which makes a show segue. And then this segue, right, is going to be the one that is going to be called the register segue. Register segue. So that's the two segues we set up so far. Okay, there's another one we haven't set up yet, but we don't need it. Let's run this thing, and we should be able to at least go to the register controller. We should also get a negative response here. And just to prepare for this, I'm going to go to our API. So this is something we need to do ahead of time, perhaps. And for YouTube, when you're doing your video, I know sometimes people you time out, and it's totally fine. So let's go to my API login view, and up here we have this, right? So all I want to do is just kind of grab all this and copy that, and then go to my Chrome and paste that in. And then what I want to do is API/movie/list, right? That's what I want. And then kind of let it spin for a second before we test, right? Because we want to do this because otherwise, if it's spinning down, then we're not going to be able to test anything because it's got nothing we can do, right? All right, let's see how this is going to go. It's going to take some time, and for you guys too. One thing we should also do while we're waiting is we should pull up render. I always think this is a good idea. So if I go to render.com, and we should look at the dashboard, and because we're going to get, we're also going to get access to, you know, kind of some logs, and then we can see what's going on here when we're, you know, when this is live. Now, there's no logs to show because it says our instance is spun down and so on. And so, but we want to look at logs because this will show us kind of the activity that's going on right now, okay? And so we have to wait until this is done. And I think this is a really good idea because we can see when I'm doing so. There we go. So now it's starting to come up. You can see that it's, you know, kind of coming back alive, if you will. That's what this is doing here, okay? Let's wait till this is good to go. And again, there's a lot of work here to get done. So node server, there we go. So it's running finally, and it's going to connect to MongoDB Atlas. This is good. These are all good things. So everything is working as it should. And so you can watch this stuff come alive. Okay, there we go. So now we've got a 404, but we did get a movie list. That means we should see some kind of movies here. So I can look at these, and we can see that there's movies that are in here, you know, that we can see. Okay, so you can see some people have added some stuff on mine. Guys, don't use mine. This is for me to use, not for you to use. If you're using my stuff, this is almost a misconduct if you think about it. You're representing my stuff as your stuff. This is not how it should be. This has got to be your stuff that you get to test with. Otherwise, you're just representing, you know, your in-class exercise as mine, right? And that's not correct. All right. So if you did that, you're going to get a 0. Just letting you know. And I may have to consider other actions, right? Because you know, it's unfortunate that you would try and do that because you have your own, right? You have to connect to your own stuff, not to mine. You have yours already. All right, so let's go to the next part, which is what we want to do. Okay, so So now that we have a connection to this, we should be able to test it in Xcode by running it. And what it should do is it should take us to the screen that we see here. Just going to tell. All right, and let's try putting in some username password. So I'm going to kind of put that in. So I'm going to say Tom, and then my password doesn't matter what it is because it's wrong because we don't have anything. And if I click login, then we're not going to get any response. But it says, look, login failed, error, login error. Okay, but this is good. This is a good error. So now let's see what we got when we go back to the logs, which is something we want to see. So going back to here, login error, user credentials error, user not found. See, for us, this is perfect. This is telling you have access to this, that something's wrong. We don't have any credentials here, and this is what we wanted to see. Okay, so this is working. All right, well, the other thing we can test here, if I go back to our Xcode, we can also test to see, can we navigate to our register screen? So if I click on register, it brings up the register screen, okay? And this is so far what we have. This is good. This is good stuff. This is what we have so far. And let's now, I'm going to keep going for another half an hour or so just to get to that. We'll take a break at the midway point today just to make sure we get most of iOS done and then get into Android because we don't have a lot of time. All right, so back to this. So I want to get into the register view controller now. So login we've done. Let's put this up on GitHub. We're going to say git add dots, git commit -m. We'll say added login view controller logic. It looks like it works. Git push. So that's everything you got up there that we have so far. Awesome, right? Next, what we want to do is we want to add in the code and the logic for the register view controller, but we need some work to do first. So back to the main storyboard. Main storyboard is here. We have our register view controller here, and let me just kind of pull these apart again. And what I want to do is pull up the assistant editor. Here's my assistant. And what I want is to kind of go in here, and then I want to make these connections. We have a few to make, okay? So, because we have a bunch of them at the beginning, and let's do it. Let's do this. So we're going to do a couple of outlets, first name and then last name and a bunch of them. So here's the first name outlet, so control drag to here. So first name, right? Text fields, we're going to call this text fields. And it's of type text fields, we're going to make that happen. And then we're going to do the next one, which is our last name text field. We need to make all these connections because otherwise we won't do this. So there we go. And this will be the last name text fields. And we're going to do the next one, which is the email address text fields. So again, control drag. So we'll say email text fields. There we go. And we got that one. And we're going to also do the username text field and password text field. So username text fields. So control drag. Username text field. Right? And we're going to do that one. And we're going to do the password text field, control drag. So password text field, right? And there's one more called confirm password. I'm not sure if I've enabled it in my example here, but we'll see what happens. So here's this one, right? We'll say that this one is going to be the confirm password text fields. Confirm password text field. There we go. And those are the ones that we've added in for these. We also need a register button pressed and a cancel button pressed. So let's do those ones now. So I'm going to do those down in here. We don't need to modify the view did load. I don't have to do that. But I do need to add a couple of those references. So also the buttons are a little off. You can kind of skinny them over a bit because, again, I copy pasted this one, in here. And let me just zoom in. I don't like that too much. Again, I just want to zoom in so we can see the buttons. And you can kind of move them over just a touch, just so that way they fit a little better onto the screen. I think it's pretty good. And so, yeah, so I want to do the register button, and the cancel button, right? So let's do the control drag trick, control drag, and then it's an IV action. We're going to call this the register button pressed event, right? So what happens when you press the regular, this of course the type is of UI button. I forgot to do that, UI button. I mean, you don't need to, but I like to do it. And then the other one is the cancel button. So let's grab the cancel button and then control drag into this, and we'll call this the cancel button pressed event. And this time we'll say it's of type UI button. Okay, so those are the two types. We'll connect those, there we go. And now we'll start adding code, but we'll close off the editor. So we're going to close this off. There we go. And then we don't have to look at this anymore. We can go back to our storyboard over here. So I'm going to go back to, API register view controller there. And now I can start coding all of the piece parts that we're missing. All right, so this is a little bit trickier because now we're actually adding stuff in here. So inside of this register button pressed event, we're going to say guardlet username is equal to username text field dot text, and we're using guardlets again because email address is equal to email text field dot text. I'm using guardlets to make sure that we can get them all. First name is equal to first name text field dot text, and let last name is equal to last name text field dot text. So I'm kind of configuring those things. Let password is equal to password text field dot text. So those are the things we want. Else, if we can't get any of those things, well, there's an error. Let's print, something like please enter all the required fields. Again, this could be a pop-up. I'm just not putting that in here right now. That basically says, hey, a little message box that comes up that says that you need to do that. Okay, but this is the first part. We kind of did this similar thing to our to the login, right? So now here we're going to say the URL string is equal to, and we need to get the proper URL again. I'm going to go back to the API login view controller, right? And we're going to grab this URL string right here, this part. Actually, let's grab this whole thing. Oop. And I'm going to copy this and go back to register view and just kind of clobber this part. There we go. And then so instead of login, what we want to do is register. Okay, so that's the link for us. Again, this would be different for you. Guardlet URL equals to, this is kind of similar, right? Which is string of type URL string. And what else we want to say? Else, if that's not true, what do we want to do? We want to print invalid URL. So this is all the same. And so what I'm going to do to save time is I'm going to do some copy pasting here, just so that way I'm not going to copy or type everything out by hand. So really what we want to do first, we want to configure the request. And configuring the request requires us to kind of first do this. We want to set up our parameter list. Okay, so here's our parameters. And the parameter this time is not just one thing. It's not just username. We're going to put all of these in the parameter list. What did we do different here? First name. Cannot find first name in scope. Oh, I didn't spell it right. This is good. This is a good test. First name. All right, so first name, last name, password, all this stuff is the parameter list. Now, we didn't have that last time. We have a more complex parameter list this time because this is like our body, our URL body, or that's the stuff. The next part is we want to be able to do the same kind of content type stuff that we did last time. So let's paste that in. So that's the next part. So the next part is let us make the request, right? So we're kind of configuring the request here. That's what we're doing, right? And this is part of our configuration. We're taking the parameters we just got And we're also creating a URL request object where we're starting to configure it as a post type request. Okay, so again, we're still doing the configuration piece. We're going to do a do catch now, just like we've done in the past, where we set up our, kind of our next piece. So this is the do catch, and the do catch is going to be, this is all similar. This is like copy paste from the other, that's why I'm doing this, from the other kind of request object that we just did. Like it's exactly the same, right? The only thing I'm doing is just saving some time because we're going to run out of time and I don't want to do that. Okay, so this is what we have here, and then same thing goes with our catch. We're going to say if we get to the catch statement, that means we failed to encode the parameter somehow. That should not be a thing, right? We should never fail to encode anything, okay? But just in case, we put that in there, and that's a good practice to do what we want to do. Okay, so that's the next part. So far we've created a request object and request body. Now we want to issue our request, and this is where I'm going to do some typing. So I'm going to say let task here. So let task. This is where we're going to create our task. This is our async request. So let task is equal to a URL session dot shared dot data task, and data task with, and I'm going to say with the request object. And again, it's going to be a completion closure where we're going to have the data, the response, and the error in, and that is going to be where we're going to get this next part. So again, this is duplication now at this point, where I have the error and empty responses. That stuff I'm going to copy paste because that's exactly the same. So this is paste. So this is the stuff I was talking about, right? So let's just do this, and you can see that all this is basically saying is, hey, if let error, kind of stuff, then we're going to fail to send request, and then the data, we're going to try and get the data, whatever that data is, and if data is equal to data, then otherwise we're going to have an empty response. If we can't get data, then somehow we didn't get anything back. Okay, so that's the first part. The next part is going to be the do catch, which is going to be involved with the response. So this is the response object, and then we're going to do a do catch. Right, here's the catch. Okay, here's the do catch, and the do catch is going to be for the response object itself. Right, so again, just like we did before, I'm going to kind of serialize, and I'm just going to copy the part that you can see, just to save time. It's very similar to what we did before. So there's the first part, all right? And let me explain how this works now. So again, let JSON deserialize object, JSON object, we're going to get the data options as string. This is exactly the same as the other one. If we have a success, then the user registers successfully, if the success is true. And then we dispatch our queue, our main, and what we're going to say is API login view controller. Now this is interesting. We're going to go to shared, and we're going to call clear login text fields. We're going to do this, and so we're going to go through this, the API login view controller. So if we ever go back to login, which we will, we want to be able to clear the text fields so we can actually log in. And then we're going to self-dismiss, which this part is basically going to allow us to navigate back to the login view controller. Else, if somehow we get an error, what is that error? And then print that out. Catch. The catch part is basically where we're going to just say something like, oops. We're going to say something like error decoding JSON response, right? So that's the thing we're going to get there. And we're going to say that if somehow we're not able to decode. That's the catch part. After the catch is done, and after this part is done, but before we close off everything, we're going to say task resume, right? So that's the thing that we're going to get here, and that is our register event. Here's the stuff that we're not doing because to save time. Man, this is something you can do if you want. We're not checking. We're not doing any checking, right? We didn't check to see if our password and our confirmed password. Notice we're not even saving confirmed password. I'm taking that information, I'm getting it, I'm making a reference, but I'm not actually doing any kind of validation. This is what you need to do when you do your assignment 4. You need to validate that the password that they're using is matching with the password that you put up here. So we don't have this here in our code. This is stuff that's missing because we're just going to try and make this work. We're not actually putting everything in place, but we're doing most of it, okay, for you. Now, this is where it becomes tricky, where we say something like, in the cancel, we're going to say that API login view controller, so we're going to reference that again, we're going to say shared, and we're going to say that we're going to clear the login text fields. If we go back, and then we're going to dismiss, and we're going to say that the animated is true and the completion is nil. Animated is true and the completion is nil. That's what we're going to say. Okay, so that will take us back, this thing here will take us back to our login screen. Okay, and that, my friends, is the login view controller. The login view controller allows us to, the register view controller allows us to register a new user, and really what we do is we get the user information, and that's the HTTP method, that's the body, which is what we're trying to decode. We take that body, decode it, and then we use that as a parameter list when we send that to our, when we issue the request. Okay, that's what we're doing. So the request object, this is configuring the request, right? And then we issue the request, right? So that's what we're doing here. Okay, so we're issuing the request when we go to the task. When we do this part right here, the task, we're actually issuing the request. So issue the request. This is when it happens right here. Okay. All right, so this is pretty cool, right? And let's test this out. So again, I'm just going to go, let's make sure first of all that this is not silenced. So I'm going to go refresh, and yeah, we're going to have to wait for this to spin up again. Okay. And we need to do this, I'm sorry guys, but we need to do this because we're just going to fail if we don't do it, right? So that's why I'm doing it this way as well. Making pretty good time. We're almost done this piece. Now we need to do a few more things. We need to enable our our JWT. We're gonna kind of fix that up, right? And then once we enable a JWT, then we're going to be able to test it because we're saving our token. That's what we're doing. We're saving our token. There we go. So this is back. We can see that this is back to normal. And now, now that this is good, I can go back to our Xcode and let's run this now, right, and see what happens. So let's do through the full gamut. We've already done this part. Let's go register, and let's put in let's register for a new account. Well, we know actually that Tom is not registered, right? So let's put in Tom Smythe again, and let's see. My email address will be Thomas .Smythe, something new, at example.com. There it is. My username, right, is going to be, we'll call it 123456. Sorry, Thomas. Actually, we'll say Smythe, T Smythe, just to make it original, because maybe we don't have that one. T Smythe, and then the password is 123456, and the confirmed password we don't care, but we're going to put it in anyway, 123456, and then we're going to click register. So let's see what happens. Did it crash? So if I click register, it says registration failed, error, user not registered, all fields are required. So something went wrong, and I missed something when I sent it over. So first name, last name, email address, username, password, something I'm not sending over because it says this is the error that I'm getting back from my my stuff. So let's see what I missed. So back to this, go here, and it says, look, all fields are required. Some troubleshooting we can do now, okay? So what was the problem? Now this is on my error part, right? So if I go back to, let's go to here, this is not that we haven't entered everything. We've entered everything. So it's not what the user's doing, right? It's what our code is doing. What about if I do cancel? Cancel should navigate us back. And cancel says, well, unrecognized selector sent to instance. So let's go and see what the problem is there. So there's another error. So let's fix these errors. Back to this. So some errors that we're going to fix. We're going to stop this. And we're going to go back to here. Oops. And we're going to open that up. And I'm going to go back to the main storyboard and check some stuff out. So let's go cancel. And I want to, because cancel should take us back, right? That's what it should take us back to. And I want to open up this one. And I want to see what cancel does. So cancel, but let's take a look at this. So we have our touch up inside for cancel, and there's two. Our API register view controller and our API register view controller cancel button pressed. So there's an extra remnant here from me. This is my problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel both because I don't know which one is correct. And then I'm going to open up my assistant editor, right? And then I'm just going to point cancel to the right one, which is going to be this one. Okay, so I'm going to kind of control drag from here to there. Okay. And now you can see that that's clearly the right connection. So that was the problem with cancel. Cancel is now fixed, right? So again, we should try it out. So we should just be able to cancel. Now the other part is more difficult, the other issue. We're going to come back to that in a second. Okay, so username, password, I'm going to click register here. And if I click cancel, it should take us back. Yay, awesome, good. That's good. All right, so now we have that navigation happening. But what about the other stuff? What happened, to this? Let's close off this assistant editor. To find out the problem, I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to open up our API register view controller. And it's something to do with these parameters, right? Because we have username, email address, first name, last name, and password. These are the things we have. And the parameters are these things here, in quotations, are the things we care about. Okay, so back to VS Code, right? And what I want to do is I'm going to pull in in the desktop, our API, right? This part. So I'm going to drag that out, not this one. I'm going to drag this in. This in. There we go. Oof. All right, so let's see what happens. So let's take a look at our server. We're going to go to controllers, and we're going to go to our auth. That's what I want, auth. And inside auth, then I want to scroll down, and this is process login, process registration. What is it looking for? It is looking for first name, last name, lowercase, like this, right? Username and email address. Notice that this is a different thing than what I've provided. That's why it's having a problem, okay? So, not a big deal. We go back to here, and then we change these. So first name, last name is correct. Email address and username, these are all good. Last name, let's make sure it's correct. So first name, so username, email address, first name, and last name. And display name is connected to these things, right? So first name and last name is looking good. Email address and username all lowercase, and password all lowercase. Let's make sure that that's correct. I'm just checking again. I think it's something to do with these. Username, first name, last name, email address, and this stuff. Okay, now what about this stuff? Username, okay, email address, that's going to be lowercase, first name, last name, like this. So this is how it's going to look. This is the problem. So these are correct. These were not correct, and that's what the problem was. Okay, let's try it again. So now that I've corrected those, let's just build, and then let's go to register. And let's do that same thing. So I'm going to say, Thomas Smythe, and then the email address is thomas.smythe@example.com. The username is going to be thomas.smythe, right? Password 123456. User confirm password 123456, although we don't care. And then I click register, and then if everything goes well, then we're good. Look, it says user register successfully. Then if I go here and if I do something like username is thomas.smythe, and then my password is 123456, and if I click login, then it should take us back to the thing. Now somehow bad things happen here. It says login failed, error, login error. Okay, well, let's see what it says. There's another thing we have to figure out. So, but it did register us. So back to this, and it says login error, user credentials error, or user not found. Okay, well, let's look at MongoDB Atlas. So MongoDB Atlas, and let's see what we got. So back to this, and then yes, accept all cookies, sign in, and we're going to go to this. So we're checking all the stuff that we have so that we make sure that everything is good. And this is part of our process, right? So that way we're not doing things wrong. So again, let's take a look at the right project, which is MDEV. This one, right? That's you guys. And now that we're looking at that one, we can, we want to browse collections. And we want to see what we got. So in the users, how many users do we have? We have admin. We have Thomas. There's my dude, thomas.smythe at example.com. Here's my display name. Here's my username, Thomas. So Thomas, and this is my password. So Thomas is all that I have to put in there, not thomas.smythe. So that was the thing. So that is what I just put in. Oh, there's another one. Look at this, thomas.smythe. Right, so Thomas and thomas.smythe. I used two of these, right? So that's why it did this. Well, let's try Thomas and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because I know that is okay. So let's go back to this and go here, and let's try that. So let's go Thomas. Well, that should work, right? But let's try that again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then click login, and let's see if that failed too. So that's not good. So what is happening, right? So now it goes back to that other thing that I said before. So let's go back to the API login view controller, and let's see what we're getting now. So we got username, password, and username text field. This is good. And when we have our username or a request, we have a username and password request. These are the things that happen. We could output what we're getting, right? Because what we're doing is we're passing the parameters here, as an example, and that's what's going on. The username and password is coming out. Let's also try one more time. I'm just going to try and see if everything fails, because if everything fails, something else is wrong. So let's try admin, and again, we'll try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And I'll click login. Okay, so all of them are wrong. That can't be, right? Because it can't be that all of them are wrong. So let's see what we're getting. So let's go to parameters here. Let's start troubleshooting. See what we're going to get at all ends. So parameters, username, password, and this is good. And then we send these parameters off. Again, sometimes it's a spelling error, like if I typed it wrong, username, password. So let's take a look at the parameter list that I'm getting. So I'm going to just do a print, and we're going to say username is equal to / username, and password is equal to, I want to see what I'm getting, like what I'm actually inputting here, password. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then we'll rerun it. And then we'll do it again. We'll say admin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we'll click login. And then, okay, so we got admin, password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's going on? So how come this is no good? What are we getting on the API side, right? So some more troubleshooting that we have to get, because this login failed means somehow, it's not doing its job. And our API right now is not signaling with anything that's telling us that we're just getting, login error, user credentials, or user not found. We know that the user is there because we put them in, okay? And it says API / login 400, right? So we need to do some troubleshooting here. So again, what I recommend is we do a local host. And we can set this up here with Xcode. So right now it's this, right? But we can run this locally, right? Instead of like remotely. And so we can do some more troubleshooting. So here, I think I have everything in place. So I want to make sure I do. I don't have the .env file here, my API, but I will have my other stuff running over here. So let's go back to my M2024 ICE is. I'm going to go to my ICE 7 API where I have everything. There's this part. And this is where I have, all that stuff that I need, I think. Here's my M file. Okay, good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run clear there. I'm going to do a nodemon. Okay, there's that one. I'm also going to go and I'm not going to change anything yet, but I want to go here and do a TSC minus W. So starting in this mode, I will close off this one and add another one. That's what that is going to be for this that I want to do. And what I need to do is I'm going to go back to my Xcode, and here I'm going to just copy paste this URL screen. Copy, paste, and then what I'm going to say is let us kind of do one of those, and this one will be HTTP localhost 3000, right? Localhost 3000 / API login. So this is going to be us testing locally to see what's going on. Like, why am I not getting everything? So this is what's going to happen here. So let's try this out. So let's rerun this thing. So run. Okay, and now what I'm going to get is local connections. So I'm going to say again, admin 1234556, log in. It's going to give me the same error. This is good. But now I can go here and I can check to see what I'm getting. And it says login error, user credentials error now found. Okay, so what am I getting here? And how is this working, right? Because I'm getting something, but maybe not the right thing. So let's look at the routes. So the routes, again, I'm going to go to index. I go to my login. I'm doing a post request, and then it's going to be process login. Let's go to definition. So process login is here, and what are we getting? Okay, so we're getting down to this part right here. So no user. That's what it says. No user. So what are we getting? What are we getting? Because it's basically taking the user request and it's going to try and log in the user object, this part. Okay. So remember how this works when we process the login, right? We get our request object, and from the request object we have the user object, right? So the user object is of type any. Let's kind of come in here and let's do a console log. And we want to print out the user object that we're going to get. So we're going to say something like request.user. So I'm going to say I want to output request.user. That's what I want. Okay, so let's do that part. And now this is rebooting, and I come back to this. And what is the problem? And I bet you guys can see it, but I can't. Right? So that's how it goes always. All right, so I'm not going to rerun this one. I'm just going to log in again, and it says, okay, that's good. And if I go back to this, and if I look at what I'm getting, okay, error, user not found, right? And did it? Oh, I didn't save. There we go. Let's try that again. So back to this and login, and then it says undefined. So what I'm getting, the thing I'm sending, right, to the request is incorrect. That's what I'm getting. Because if I'm getting an undefined user object, that means somehow my request is being made, but I'm not getting the correct stuff in the request. So the request.body is empty, and that's why it's kind of getting me down to this part. So what happens is I'm trying to authenticate. The user object is the stuff that I'm getting in here. Now we've done this before, right? Like we've tested this API extensively, so we know it's not this, right? We know it's not this. And so we're trying to log in with the user object, right? And what's happening is we can't log in because the user object is incorrect. When I'm processing the registration worked perfectly, right? So here, the new user is request.body.username, request.body.email address, and all this stuff. And then I just register the new user and we're good to go, right? But here in my login request, right, the user this part, right, is happening, where is the user coming from? Well, if I go back down here, it says request, right? So the request object is the thing that's happening to send the user in. And let me just check to see if I've made an error here in any way. I'm just going to check my own logs, because you know what? It's all possible, my friends. Anything is possible. It's a one error and then it's like the whole thing is blown. So let me just go and just going to go check my logs, and just to make sure that it's working normally. Error any, user any, and then request, response, and next. So yeah, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that, right? Because it's not our API. I think we've tested this extensively. We know that this is going to work. We pass in the request option, the request, response, and next. So what happens is that comes here, request, response, and next. And then what happens is the user object is the request user. That's what happens, right? And that's why we're not getting anything. So basically what's happening is it's not getting here. So if there's no user, this is where we pull out this error, which is error, and then the credentials error or not user not found. This is where this is no user, right? So you know, again, we're not getting anything. If we got the wrong user, then the user information would be incorrect. We're not getting that, right? So that's why we're getting no user. That's where we're coming to this point. And that's why this isn't able to log in. So that means something's wrong with our code on the iOS side, right? Because that's something that needs to be fixed. So let me just go back there. I'm going to check our code here, and then we'll take a short break. Hopefully we'll be able to get everything done in one blow. If not, I will record 2 parts today. You know, so that way I don't take up all of your time watching this all at once with troubleshooting and all that stuff. I want to make sure that this is working properly, and it does take some time. It does take some time. That's just the way it works. I'm just going to go back to, let's just save that. Console error. Yeah, I took that away because we don't need that anymore. And I'm just going to, so it's not the API. It's not this thing, right? Because we know it's somewhere here in Xcode. And it's inside of this thing. So let's just go through this one more time. I'm just going to go check my code and make sure that it's correct. So view did load. We know we're passing the right information. And we're saying guard name, username is this, and password is this, right? And then we're making our parameters list. Here we're checking to see what they were. These are correct. We're getting the right things to come to this point. We're doing a post request, that's why it's getting there. Application. Oh, look at that. Look at that, my friends. See this? This is it. Application.json. I know this is dumb, but this is what can cause it. Let's try it, man. Oh, wow. That's crazy. Let's try it again. So let's try admin, because we know admin user's there. Admin, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then log in, and we should be able to go, yeah. See, look at that, right? Right? And so now it says user logged in successfully, and it was only because of this. Rawr, can't believe it. All right, let's stop this. So we're good. Let's put this back. So this is our test. So we're going to put this back. We're going to take this out. And now we're going to go back to here. We've now been able to log in and register. So clear git add dots, git commit -m. We'll say log in and register functionality added. Okay, we still got some stuff to do. Git push, and I'm going to take a short break. And when we come back, I'm going to enable our the stuff that we're missing, which is JWT, and then we'll start enabling those pieces inside of our main movie view controller as well. We're missing a logout button. We need some kind of way of logging out, and we need to add those pieces in. Okay, so let's stop this video and come back, and we'll finish the iOS part at least. And we'll start the Android part, and if I have to, I'll make another piece that kind of finishes everything off. Okay, let's stop right now.